Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just take the clicker. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, good morning. First of all, my thanks to the organisers to giving us this spot on the agenda to talk about sustainability, because now particularly that we're through the worst of the pandemic and we can now see the blue sky on the horizon, sustainability is really at the forefront of the agenda for this industry. And I wanted to prelude my presentation with two slides that really just captures Airbus's view on sustainability and what it means. So we pioneer sustainable aerospace for a safe and united world. So that's now Airbus's mission statement. With sustainability at its heart, we know we have to be sustainable to continue both as a business and as an industry. And yes, aviation is about uniting the world. It's about bringing people together for a safer world. So it really captures the heart of what we at Airbus want to do with the future. We have to say equally, what does sustainability mean to us? Because it means a lot of things to a lot of people. Of course, you can see on the left there, it means clean aerospace. It means decarbonisation of the industry. And of course, that's probably what you really want to hear about today, is what we Airbus can do to help decarbonise this industry. But it means for us a lot of things, a lot of other things as well, to be sustainable. We need to respect human rights, foster inclusion. These are all things that a business needs going forward to be a creative part of the world. We need to build on the foundation of safety and quality. Safety has always been absolutely imperative to aviation and to our business, and it needs to continue to be so. And business integrity. You know, we live in a world where we know we need to conduct business in an ethical way, in a way that respects the values of the entire world and the world's population. So our ambition goes well beyond the environmental aspects. It goes into what we have to be in the future world, to be a sustainable business that forms part of the global infrastructure and environment. So I just wanted to start with those two things, but I think really what everybody in the audience today wants to understand from us as a manufacturer is what we can do to decarbonize the industry. As airlines, as other parts of the infrastructure, airports, there is the feeling as a manufacturer that everyone is looking to ourselves, to Boeing, to the engine manufacturers. What's the solution? What can we do to help? And for sure, we recognize that we have to provide the leadership in that role, but we can't do it alone. We need the support of the entire industry. There are huge changes that need to be made in this industry, in its infrastructure, in its way of functioning, to become decarbonized and to become carbon neutral. So just to introduce myself, I'm the head of marketing here for the Middle East and Africa, based down the road in Dubai. What occurs to me and what surprises my colleagues back in head office in Toulouse is how important sustainability is in this region, is in the Middle East. It's very easy for people to think, the Middle East, that's all about oil. Surely the Middle East is not interested in sustainability. Absolutely to the contrary. This region knows that sustainability and new energies have to be the future, because oil will not be the energy of the future. So the Middle East, I recognize and I see today, is absolutely committed to be at the forefront of the development of the new energies that we need to pursue. So presentations typically on sustainability, certainly for the last 8, 9, 10 years have started with charts like this one. Okay, I'm guilty. I'm starting with a chart like this one again that proudly proclaims that aviation is only 2.5% of the world's CO2 emissions. It's true, but it's no longer good enough just to claim we're not the worst offender. And what I've seen in the last 2 years probably is the recognition that it doesn't matter how small we are in terms of our emissions, we have to tackle it, we have to do something about it. 2.5% is 2.5% too much. And if we stand still, that 2.5% will rise. If we do nothing, that 2.5% will go up. So my important message is on this chart is not so much, yes, there are plenty of other industries that have a bigger problem than we have. We are an emitter of CO2, and we have to tackle it, and we have to do something about it. It's also important to remember that we are a growth industry. I don't want to talk too much about the recovery. My colleague Afshin will speak later on about the recovery and how we see it going forward. But what this chart shows is our global market forecast, the one we made in 2019 before the pandemic on the grey line, and the one we made at the end of last year, the global market forecast for 2021. Of course, we see the dip there. So the left-hand scale is the RPK in billions, so it's traffic essentially, and you can see that essentially, once we're out of this pandemic, we're going to start growing again at the same rate we were growing before the pandemic. So we're a growth industry. Yes, we've lost 2 years of growth, but if we carry on growing and do nothing about it, then our emissions are going to increase accordingly. So we have that double challenge, not only of reducing our emissions, but reducing our emissions when we're flying more and more people around the world. Having said that, our track record in aviation is an excellent one. Since the dawn of the jet age, we've already reduced carbon monoxide emissions by 50%, CO2 emissions by 80% per passenger, NOx 90%, and noise, which is still an issue for local environments around airports, by 75%. So our track record of making aviation more and more environmentally friendly is a very good one. But going forward, we have a much, much bigger and steeper task ahead. The previous chart was really based around since the dawn of the jet age, let's say 60 years. We have to do a lot more in the next 30 years than we've done in the past 60 years. So these are our ambitions around the decarbonisation of our business and of Airbus. So by 2030, all our aircraft will be 100% capable of taking sustainable aviation fuel, SAF. By 2035, we'll be the first major manufacturer to offer a carbon neutral aircraft. Now that's a huge ambition. To get to a new technology aircraft in service by 2035, 13 years away, is a huge ambition, but it's one we were prepared to take on, and one that really focuses our own technical resources towards achieving that goal. And the final one, to reach net zero emissions by 2050. This, I'm happy to say, is now a target that the entire industry is really unifying around. IATA has stepped up to that goal recently. So to reach net zero emissions by 2050, that's the one that we're all together in aiming to achieve. Now to a more complex chart, but it's a very useful chart in terms of understanding what we have to do to this industry. So to explain the chart first of all, so on the left-hand axis, it's carbon dioxide emissions. Firstly historical since 2015, and then forecast. going forward. So if we do nothing, we go along that top line. As we grow, we emit more and more carbon dioxide. And we know we just cannot do that. The world will not let us do that. The governments will not let us do that. And then the various coloured slices are the things we have to do to reduce that and ultimately get to the net zero. And the first thing to observe, of course, it's going to take a lot of things. There's no one silver bullet that's going to resolve the problem. So the first section, the light blue, is latest generation aircraft. Already by introducing the latest generation of aircraft and replacing the fleets that exist today, we can reduce carbon dioxide emissions by a large amount. So that in itself, buying new aircraft today, is a help towards reaching that goal. The second, the dark blue, the disruptive technology. So this is things like hydrogen, like hybrid electric, things that can come along that can really reshape aircraft, that can really reshape the way aircraft fly. Yes, it can provide a big part of that decarbonisation, but the difficulty is with it, it doesn't come along until later. So in this chart, it's really not kicking in until 2035, and that's too late to be the only solution to the problem. Operations infrastructure, we know we can do a lot more in the efficiency of the way aircraft are routed, the way they fly. And then sustainable aviation fuels in green. So this we know already is something, the technology is there today and can provide a big proportion of the reduction in CO2 emissions that we need. So SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, is absolutely imperative, and it's something that's there today. It's something we can start today. The real only challenge with sustainable aviation fuel is the economics and the infrastructure around that business. And then the remainder to get to net zero can be done by offsetting. Offsetting pots of money that can be invested in forestation or in sequestration of carbon out of the atmosphere. So the message really on this chart, a lot of information on the chart, but the real message is we have to do all of these things. It's no one thing, there's no simple thing, there's no silver bullet. We have to pursue everything on that chart to get to our 2050 net zero. So really capturing all those things on the chart, this is Airbus's and the industry's action plan. Yes, in the orange it revolves around what we can do to aircraft technology, hydrogen technology, sustainable aviation fuels, technology and design, bringing in new technology aircraft, airport infrastructure, operations and ATM, that's another important aspect, and economic measures. There will inevitably have to be measures to shift the economy of this business towards being more sustainable. Of course, the CORSIA scheme will come into operation to offset that, but of course we need the support of governments. We don't need taxation necessarily. What we need is support to move us towards a greener aviation business. So one of the aspects I've already mentioned is new generation aircraft. There is a new generation of aircraft out there today. So this is the Airbus family, A220, A320neo, A330neo, and the A350. And the newest addition to our portfolio of aircraft, the A350 Freighter, which I'll mention in a little bit. But the point to pick out, only 12% of today's in-service fleet is that new generation of aircraft. So there's 88% of aircraft out there that could be replaced today with a significant reduction in carbon dioxide emissions. 25% reduction is what this generation of aircraft is bringing in terms of CO2 emissions compared to the previous generation. So fleet replacement and accelerated fleet replacement is actually a key aspect of the decarbonisation of the industry, because it's something that is happening now and can be accelerated now. I mentioned the A350 Freighter. Why am I talking about a freighter? Well, typically freighters are old aircraft that have maybe been converted from passenger aircraft. There may be aircraft that are produced by the manufacturers at the end of a program's life. But Airbus is committed to producing a new generation freighter using our latest aircraft, the A350, as a freighter. And already that can bring 40% lower fuel burn and CO2 emission than a 747 freighter. And this is changing the paradigm really in the freighters. And I'm pleased to say that just down the road, Etihad have committed to the A350 Freighter as a new sustainable form of freight transport. So it's worth noting that there's plenty of technology out there today that can reduce. Okay, it's not zero emission, but it is significantly reducing the emissions of this business. Sustainable aviation fuel, I've mentioned already. Sustainable aviation fuel is essentially a fuel produced from biomass that can be dropped into existing aircraft using existing technology. Today, all our aircraft can take a blend of up to 50% sustainable aviation fuel, and we're working towards making that 100%. As with a lot of the changes in the industry, infrastructure is going to be key. Moving the industry is going to be key. Today, 9 airports are delivering sustainable aviation fuel. It needs to be a whole lot more to get to a place where the industry can move that. And of course, there are the economic challenges. It's far more expensive today than jet aviation fuel. But Airbus is committed to using sustainable aviation fuel wherever it can. We do a lot of our delivery flights, so when we deliver an aircraft from our plants in Toulouse, in Hamburg, and even in Tianjin, in Mobile in America, we can deliver aircraft with sustainable aviation fuel. Of course, it's a tiny, tiny proportion of the amount of flights around the world, but at least it shows that commitment to sustainable aviation fuel and to show that we can fly our aircraft with SAF. Briefly, I mentioned of the projects ongoing to get to that 100% sustainable aviation fuel capability. The A350 platform, the eCliff initiative, which is done with our partners Rolls-Royce, to develop the means to get to 100% SAF, so that sustainable aviation fuel can be the only fuel in the fuel tank. And Vulcan, it's a similar initiative on the A320 family, so the single aisle family. So the initiatives are ongoing. And then to the future, of course, the world is looking to manufacturers like ourselves to come up with the great, new aircraft that can really change this industry. So we really are refocusing our technical resources towards building that future with advanced technologies. We've said, we've committed ourselves very squarely that we believe that hydrogen has a key part to play in that future. So we've launched the Zero E concept, aircraft essentially with a zero emission footprint. Three baseline possibilities. So the one you see in the foreground, a roughly 200-seater with 2,000 nautical miles range, classically what we would term a turbofan engine, but based around hydrogen, so not really exactly the same as today's turbofans. A turboprop solution, again, hydrogen-based, and then the real leap would be towards where we're bringing airframe technology, the blended wing technology, where we can make aircraft more efficient simply by their shape. Okay, they still need the new propulsion systems. But we're looking at these 3 concepts, but as I say, our target is to get to a zero emission aircraft by 2035. Why do we believe in hydrogen for the future of aviation? Hydrogen carries a lot of energy. It can be kept in cold storage, cryogenic storage, in a way that electricity, for example, cannot. And there is the possibility to produce green hydrogen. Hydrogen takes a lot of energy to produce. So we really think hydrogen is one of the many ways forwards for the industry. I'll touch briefly on electrical propulsion. You know, there is still room for electrical propulsion or hybrid propulsion. We did a research project called EFAN-X, which looked at ways of bringing in hybrid propulsion systems. But the challenge with any electrical propulsion system is the batteries. Batteries are just too heavy for today's aircraft, for long-haul large aircraft. But in regional aircraft, we think that will play a role. Carbon offsetting, there is going to be a role in governmental schemes, industry-wide schemes to reduce the amount of carbon that airlines produce. We actively support ICAO and ICAO's CORSIA program as really the industry norm for carbon offsetting. But there also has to be other means. There has to be other support from governments around the world to move us towards greener aviation, because it will cost money. And it's not good enough simply to tax the industry so that it moves towards greener propulsion systems. Very quickly now, just touch on the other smaller things we can do. Like I say, we really have to leave no leaf unturned in decarbonising the industry. There are things that can be done today to reduce the carbon footprint of existing aircraft. Optimizing descent profiles is one thing. We've introduced on our A330neo an air management function where the air conditioning system used inside the aircraft and the pressurization system is optimized, so it actually reduces the fuel burn of the aircraft. And we can retrofit our aircraft with sharklets. So our single aisle family, for example, can be retrofit with sharklets. So these are all ways of reducing fuel burn and therefore reducing carbon emissions. We know that an awful lot can be done in the area of air traffic management, more direct flight paths. The technology is there. We just need to, again, it's an infrastructural problem that we have to create the infrastructure that allows for more direct flights, more direct flying around airports, more direct flying between airports. So there's a lot to be done there. I'm going to speak briefly as well. So the very right hand there's a thing called fellow fly. Now, what you might be asking is fellow fly. Fellow fly is a very clever initiative where we've identified that if one aircraft follows another within around 3 kilometers, its fuel burn is reduced by around 5% because of the wake of that aircraft in front of it. Now, the technology is there to achieve that. The technology is there to make one aircraft fly another. But again, there are big changes to be made in the infrastructure that we'd have to find ways, first of all, of making sure that aircraft can get together before they fly long routes together, without one aircraft having to wait for the other or one aircraft having to speed up for the other, because then you lose the benefit. And of course, you have to work out a commercial way of giving some of the benefit to the lead aircraft. It's only the following aircraft that gets the 5% benefit, but of course the benefit would need to be shared by each aircraft. So these are ways that we're exploring to really just take every percentage point we can out of the fuel burn and carbon burn infrastructure. I've touched on air management systems. Our subsidiary NavBlue offers services for flight operations which can help airlines to reduce their fuel burn, either through fuel optimization techniques, better planning, better flight planning, So there are elements there that airlines can take on board today just to get their fuel burn and by extension their carbon emissions down. So, oh, I lost my last slide. There we are, sorry. So really, yeah, just to wrap up, I think my most important message today is, yes, Airbus is fully engaged in the decarbonisation of this industry, but we really cannot do it alone. It's going to need efforts from the whole industry, from airports to governments to everyone around the world to really work with us. And I'm pleased to say that in the region we're pursuing partnerships with a number of airlines out there to really work together to get towards a more sustainable future. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy the rest of the conference.